Okay, hello. So I'm going to do a quick tutorial on how to rig a character in 3ds Max using cat rigs, and I'll do a quick basic skin at the very end, maybe the last 2 minutes of the video. So I've got these three characters. For this tutorial I'm going to use this low poly guy and rig him and skin him. So he's fairly low poly, he's 884 polygons, and then in a later video I will rig and skin this guy, who's pretty much the same except he's wearing armor, and so the skinning will be slightly different. Then maybe throw this guy into the same video as the armor dude, and he's just purely mechanical, so the skinning again will be different to how he was skinned and how he was skinned, but the rigging will be pretty much the same. So he'll be very simple to skin though. So yeah, I'm just gonna hide those guys until later, and we'll just work on this guy. So first off, I'll just say, when you're skinning a character, you want to work as low poly as you can, really, so you don't have a lot of vertices. I've got like 864 verts here, but say he wasn't how you wanted him to look at the end. You wanted him to be smoother rather than blocky fingers and square fingertips and stuff. Say you wanted him to look more like this, where he's got nice rounded fingers and overall he looks a bit smoother. I mean, if you turn off the wireframe, he looks a bit better. So you do that after you've skinned him though, because now he's got 3,500 verts nearly, and with that off he's got 864. So when it comes to skinning, you've basically quadrupled the amount of verts you have to skin to the bones, which makes a lot more work. So you just do that at the end basically. Another thing I want to say is about these 8 buttons I have, because you won't have these. So if you're wondering what the hell they are, all they are is custom buttons that I added that are in the modifiers, so you can find them all in here anyway. All I've done is added 8 buttons of just modifiers that I use a lot of, so I don't have to go into the modifier list all the time and mess around with them. So that's all that is. So yeah, let's get started. So to rig using cat rigs, you go into create and you go over to the helpers tab and use the drop down here to go to cat objects, and you grab your cat parent, which is the base for the rig. There's a few presets here, but we're not going to use them. I'm going to use none, so it's going to just create the base and no bones. And I'm going to left click and drag out a base for the rig, and I'm going to set the unit ratio to 1. What the ratio does is basically, it's what I dragged out, changes the size of it, but I prefer to work at a 1:1 ratio, and as you can see it's pretty okay. I mean, if I just zero it all out, so it's like in the exact same place as the character, you can see he's like right in the middle of it. It's a decent size. I usually make it so it's like just encompassing his feet kinda. So yeah, we've got our cat parent now, and first thing you do is add a pelvis. You scroll down there and just, there's an add pelvis button. Click that and it creates your first bone, which is called a hub. I'm going to rename it to pelvis just so I know it's the pelvis bone. And I'm going to just change the width of it a bit. Actually, I'm going to press Alt X on this guy so I can see through him, and freeze him. So freeze selection. That's just so I can't click him anymore, so I don't click on him by accident basically. So I'm just going to resize this a bit so it fits. Move it back into his body a bit. Maybe, yeah. So you just kind of go by eye where you're placing things. So the pelvis should be roughly there. And then you've got your pelvis in place, you just click add leg and it adds a leg. And now I'm going to go into the right view to just position this leg properly. So I want it to bend pretty much from there. With cat rigs they bend from the top of the bones and like the middle of the bone. So when you're rotating and stuff, you want to think of the joint that you're moving. So this joint is the knee joint, but as you can see it bends from the middle. So any joints you want, if you want to hinge from the knee, which would be pretty much, let's go back into the right view properly. So the knee's going to bend from about here. So I want this joint to be there, because that's where the knee's going to bend from. So, I mean, you can go into wireframe and try to line it up a bit better maybe, but you don't have to be too precise. You want to get like pretty much as close as you can, but again, you don't have to be exact. So you've got this, and then you want a little bit of a bend in the knee, just for animating purposes. When you're animating it later on, you don't want it straight like that, because it'll cause a lot of popping when he's walking and stuff, and the animation will look very jerky. So what I'm going to do is just position it as well in the front view, and position the ankle in the front view, and then over here in the ankle bone you have the number of digits, which decides how many toes you've got basically. So for this guy, he's wearing boots, so I'm just going to have one toe bone that controls the entire foot, and it's going to have like a foot bone and then a toe bone at the end, so he can bend the tip of his toes basically, but only all at once. He can't bend individual toes. So I'm just going to put 1 in there. You just change that to 5 if your person actually had toes, or if you had 5 toes you'd put to 5. Then I'm just going to increase the length of the bone and rotate it a little bit and move it over a little bit. If you double click, you select like the entire bone. If you see in here, I selected this and it's not moving this one, but if you double click on it, it selects both of them, and you see it moves both of them. I'm just going to reposition it a bit so it's like kind of where the foot should be. And then I'm going to work in the local view, or local coordinates, because for rotating and stuff it's a lot easier when I'm rigging, at least. So all I'm doing now is trying to line this up with where I want the toe to bend. So this is the toe line here, and this is the boot where I want the boot to bend. So I'm just going to increase that a little bit so it's kind of coming across the same place, and then I'm going to increase this to be pretty much the length of the foot, and then you can increase the width here to kind of get more in the shoe. Just like roughly follow the size of your mesh is what I usually do. This foot platform is kind of smaller than the foot, so I'm just gonna increase it so it's a bit bigger than the foot, so it's easier to click. So yeah, there's the leg done. Just double check this right view. Yeah. Okay, so that's his leg done. So then you just select the pelvis again, and when you add the next leg, it'll copy all the changes you did to this leg to the next one. So when I do this, and the model is symmetrical, so when I do this, you'll see it's put everything in the right place. I don't have to fiddle around with that leg as well. So now as we move up the body to the upper torso, it's you just add a spine to create the first bit, and this hub here works the same as the pelvis. See, it's called pelvis 001 because it's basically a copy of this. But I'm going to call it chest because it's pretty much the rib cage or the chest bone. And I'm going to just adjust the size of it a little bit, move back, and change the number of bones in the spines from 5 to 3 because it's kind of low poly model, so I don't need a lot of bones in the spine because there's not enough actual topology to use all those bones. So now we've got the chest in place pretty much. All I'm doing is lining it up to where I want the arms to come out of basically, so maybe you'll even up a little bit more. And then you just add an arm, and it adds your arm, and now I just want to position this bone here is the collar bone basically. This bone here is the upper arm, so this joint is like the shoulder joint. So I'm just gonna move the collarbone forward a bit, and then I'm gonna change this to view for a sec, just to position this arm properly. So I want it kind of there, and then in the top view I can position it a bit better there. Now I'm going to rotate it so it rotates the whole arm up and that way, just to kind of get into the right position. Maybe backwards a bit because it's kind of going backwards. Now I'm going to position the elbow, so the elbow is going to be on this this triangle here. This kind of vertice here is where the elbow is hinging from. So I'm just going to position that pretty much bang on there, and in the front view I'm going to move it up a bit, or up quite a lot actually, apparently. Yeah, so then I can rotate this and turn it to kind of match the way the arm is going again. So you can see there it's pretty much okay, and then just change the length of this bone here because this is the wrist joint here on the palm bone. So whereas his wrist is up here somewhere, so this bone is way too long. So I'm just gonna adjust it to get it roughly into place and rotate it a bit again maybe. So that's pretty where I want it to be pretty much. Then the hand. So the hand is kind of confusing because I always think it should be that way, but then because it's this way I never know if that's the bottom or that's the top or what way it is. So if you just add the fingers first before you do any of that moving, you'll see it puts the thumb in, so then you know like the thumb is meant to be there. So you just position it like that, and then just kind of line it up roughly with the way it's going to go. For fingers, they're kind of different to these bones. They're not actually attached to the palm, so when you're rotating as well, actually for the fingers especially, if you double click to select the entire chain and then rotate, you'll see it curls the bones, but if you only select the first one and rotate, it'll not curl it. So you just jump between them a lot of the time when you're doing fingers. So I'm just going to position this kind of roughly where I think it should be. So it's up way too high, so double click and select the entire finger. What I want is to get the joint kind of there maybe. Just kind of somewhere in there where the thumb would hinge from. the way it's going. Rotate a bit and rotate up a bit, and now I'll just extend this bone here. Is going to go all the way to this line because that's where the first knuckle is, kinda. And then select this one, gonna position it where I want it. Again, just the length to the next line. Then position this, rotating. It's all rotating and moving. For rigs, it's a lot of fiddling around really, but it's not too bad. And just make it roughly the size it's meant to be. And the fingers, so the fingers are kind of off as well, they're not attached either, so I'm just going to kind of place them where the finger will start bending from, which is this line across here kind of. So I'm going to place it roughly there, and then rotate it to match the kind of flow, and I'm going to double click on it and curl it, and then increase the length of this. And for the fingers, it's got I've got like little triangles here which are basically the knuckles, so when I'm actually bending all this, I just want to line up each joint kind of in the middle of these triangles. So hopefully that works out. So I get this, extend, this, extend, and that should be pretty good. So just do this for all the other fingers as well. It's very repetitive on the old finger, but sure, it can't all be fun, I suppose. So again, place it roughly where you want it, rotate, curl, change the length, again rotate, change the length, rotate, change the length. So that's kind of where that finger should be. I'm just going to move this finger out of the way entirely for now because it's kind of in the way of this one. Now I'm going to go to here and then position this. Where am I going? Right, so it's more of that angle kinda. Then put a bit of curl on it, and again extend this till it matches kinda the angle I want. Change length, rotate, change length, and I'm going to move this over a bit, am I? Yeah, to there, and rotate it a bit again, just because it's not quite at the right angle. Okay, it'll do. Maybe up there. Yeah, that's a bit better. Alright, so one finger left. And just rotate. Move. I'll do this from this angle actually, it's a bit easier. Rotate to curl it. Then increase the length of this one to there. Rotate a bit more. Rotate this one a bit more. And increase length to there. And then do this one a bit less. So now we've got that kind of working. So that's the hand done. So now we just do the same as we did with the leg, add an arm, and it'll copy over all the stuff. Now all that's left is to add a head. So to add a head, there's no head button like the arm and leg and stuff, so you just add another spine and change the spine bones to 1 for this one in particular. And go into the front view and just place this where you want the head to be. So roughly the size of the head as well, maybe. And forwards a bit so it's matching the head. Now you can see the neck is kind of bent forward, which is fine because it has a kind of bend to it. So I'll just move it a bit more. So now we have our entire rig, and that's how you do a cat rig basically. So now I'm just going to quickly skin it. So all you do to skin it is you need to unfreeze all, so I can select this body again, press Alt X so I can see it, and then you just go into the modifiers and come down here and there's a skin modifier. Select skin, then down here you have bones, so you select add bones, and these are all the bones that we just made for our rig. And there's the leg platforms and the character, which is these little rectangles and the triangle with the arrow. So we don't want them because they're not actually bones. So you go into select and make sure that select children is on, and just select, oh, I just deselected it. Yeah, so now when you select the pelvis, it'll select all the bones in the entire thing, and it won't select these leg platforms and stuff. So just add them and you can see they've added all the bones. So now when we move our rig, you will see the mesh is actually skinned, and it's skinned okay. I mean, there's some dodgy deformations going on, but it's pretty decent. So yeah, that's how you do it. So then say we would I'll just position these arms down a bit, and you could go into motion and say add a cat motion layer, go into cat motion editor, go into two legs, character walk, load that, and then press play, and you can hide the rig now and press play, and there he is walking. He's snapping a bit because there's not enough frames basically for the walk cycle. So if you look in here in globals, it says max step time is 35 frames, and we've 100 frames, so 35 doesn't divide into 100 properly. So if you want to just get them a bit smoother, all you have to do is, rather than changing the step time, I will just go down here to time configuration and change the length of frames to 105, which is 335s. So now you will see that he's no longer jumping at the end of the animation. And then you just come in and like make your own animations or tidy up the cat motions, and yeah, then for the skinning it's a bit wonky, but it's just always skinned at the minute, so there's not, it's all like just manual skinning. After that you'd have to go in manually and do it, but I'm not going to go into that in this video because it can take quite a while. The only other thing I'm going to do is actually show you how to add controllers. So say you don't want this rig showing, but you want to move around your character, and you can't because you have to select the rig to move things. So all you have to do is select one of the bones that you want to be able to move, add gizmo, add say a circle gizmo, then when you actually I need to open this because it's after putting the gizmo in here. ARM2 gizmo. Okay, so I'll put that in the rig controllers layer and hide the rig. Now I've got a gizmo that I can rotate, but I don't have the rig, so it's like not as intrusive on the thing. I mean, if you're removing the head there, you can't see the head mesh at all, so you don't know what's going on under there. But if you have a gizmo, you can see stuff. So yeah, that's the end of this tutorial, I think. Kinda dragged on longer than I expected, but hopefully it was useful to some people at least. And cheers for watching.